I have with me today, through Zoom, Scott Patton. Scott works with RIP Medical. Hi, Scott.
Hi.
And Scott has agreed to come on with us and talk a little bit about, as a way of follow-up, our work with RIP back in the spring and how that may have benefited people in Ray County. And if he's heard anything, of course, I don't know if y'all know this or not, but we have received some notes of thanks. We haven't seen anybody yet who wants to actually go on camera with us. Hopefully that'll happen, but if it doesn't, that's not why we're here. We're here just to influence lives. So Scott, first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you became involved with all of this.
Oh, sure. Thanks, David. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And of course, I want to, express my gratitude to First Lutheran Church of Algona. This is a wonderful project that we've completed with you all, and I'll certainly keep you in touch on, developments as they happen. So thanks for the introduction, Scott Patton. I'm the Director of Development at RIP Medical Debt. My job is to go out and help donors find opportunities to relieve medical debt through our model, which is a bit of a hybrid. We can purchase medical debt either from the secondary debt market, which is a place where some hospitals will sell their medical debt if they can't collect it, and then a person or company that buys the medical debt, they can do a number of things with it, but most of the time they just want to try to collect it, right? So we can buy medical debt there, or now, and increasingly so, we're buying medical debt directly from hospitals themselves. And this, of course, is a wonderful development that's really kicked off this year. And we're able to get further upstream and get that medical debt before it has an opportunity to really have a terrible impact through credit reporting and in other ways for the patients who, of course, encountered this medical debt through no fault of their own.
Sure. So let me just stop you there, Scott. So what you're saying is hospital sells it to a secondary source, and the hospital hasn't gotten any traction, so that gets reported on the credit score. Gets sold to the secondary source, no traction there, and so it gets reported on the credit report. Is that right? And the credit keeps going down.
Right. Most of the time, the first moment that a derogatory trade line mark is put on the patient's credit report is when the debt is already at the secondary debt market. Most hospitals don't like to get involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that hospitals have encountered a lot of negative publicity, especially around suing patients and other ways that damage their patients economically. So in most cases, the hospitals aren't going to be doing that. Not all, but most. But it's the secondary debt market that can sometimes use that as a tool to leverage the people that they're trying to collect debt from.
Sure.
So yes, that's correct. And so the secondary debt market, they're going to do their best to collect it using various techniques, the derogatory trade line mark being one of them. And if they can't collect it, what do they do, right? And so, we'll approach them and say, look, you're not doing anything with this. The patients are still believing that they owe this medical debt, and in fact, they do officially, legally. So we want to buy that and do away with it so that this cycle can be broken, at least on the accounts that we have access to, right? That doesn't mean that the patient doesn't have other medical debts, but we try to get what we can, vacuum all of that up and toss it, and of course send letters to the patients, the beneficiaries, and let them know exactly which accounts we bought so that they no longer have the understanding that it's their responsibility to pay those.
Yes, and actually I've seen a copy of that letter. You had one made up especially for us. And you sent that to everybody that we helped out in Ray County.
That's right. We sent about a little over 700 letters in Ray County.
From us?
The average recipient owed about $1,800 of medical debt. That's even a little bit above our average. Our national average is about $1,000 that we're relieving each time. And so $1,800. I mean, who wouldn't appreciate that that kind of relief?
Well, and more than, and aside from that, just getting their credit ratings cleaned up so that they can eventually go out and buy a house, or they can go out and be participating in those markets and live a life.
Yeah, exactly. When and if there are derogatory trade line marks on their credit, we make sure and have those cleaned up. So that is a feature of what we're doing, and it's an important step because not only do we want to relieve medical debt for folks, but we want them to again gain access to the financial tools that are available to everyone who isn't being buried by these kinds of things.
Sure, yeah. And now, did I hear you correctly? We helped about 700 families?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow, that's amazing. We actually, that's first I've heard that. That's first we've had that report. And I do know we've received a couple of notes, or you've received a couple of notes of thanks. And I think I published those in the newsletter, folks, if you want to take a look. Man, that's wonderful, Scott. How long have you been doing this, you personally?
Personally, I've been with RIP Medical Debt for 5 of the 7 years of existence. The first couple years was really just about trying to gain attention for the cause and for the program. And then I came on board and just started to help, along with some other people, build up the fundraising and program infrastructure so that we can make this a sustainable thing and do it year over year over year,
Sure.
rather than just a one-off here and a one-off there. We tried to, and successfully were able to create a nonprofit organization that functions like all nonprofits, and it allows donors the ability to basically buy medical debt for pennies on the dollar and relieve them for people in need. So very happy to be doing this, and hope to be doing it for a long time, and hope to galvanize and strengthen awareness of this issue,
Yeah.
and let people know what options are available to them,
Okay.
and maximize impact.
Sure.
So medical debt is a really easy attraction for me. I think it is for a lot of our donors too,
Yeah.
because these are debts that people encounter through no fault of their own.
Right.
The Bible says, "Let no debt remain outstanding, except our debt to love one another." And I think that contextually, what they mean is what is meant is that pay what you owe, right? Don't borrow money and then renege on the promise of repayment. But in this particular situation, the patients, they don't have a choice.
Right.
You can't sit down if you have an injury and shop around and try and make the best decision about which emergency room to go to. And if you have cancer, that there's an average price tag that exists. There's nothing you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to want to extend your life on earth. You have obligations to friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a shame to have to adopt some mentality like, oh, I can't afford this, so I'm just going to lay down and die. That's not the way we work as human beings.
Right.
So you're going to take the measures you need to take in order to stay alive and fulfill your responsibilities.
Yeah.
But what we've unfortunately developed in this country is a model that creates an enormous amount of debt for people. And you can be doing everything right by what the qualities and characteristics that we admire in our culture in America.
Mm-hmm.
Working hard, paying your bills, paying your debts, paying what you owe. You can do all of that and still end up completely underwater with one trip to the emergency room. Okay, it doesn't matter if you have insurance, if you have a good job. We've heard from people who, married couples who are both working and have good insurance and have 2 children. Financial responsibilities are tough now. I mean, unless you are a person of great means, we all encounter hardship.
Yeah.
And you can be doing everything right by the characteristics that we value in this country and still end up hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and you nailed it with that Bible quote. The only thing that we owe each other is love, and that's really what this is.
That's right.
It's amazing. There's also something in the Bible called the Jubilee year. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
I am.
Yeah, yeah, and just for you folks, every 7 years, all debt is forgiven. So if I owe you or you owe me, maybe you owe me, when that 7th year rolls around, then it is my obligation as a brother in the faith to relieve you of that debt. And it's a clearinghouse to start over. And man, that is the essence of the Christian faith, starting over. That's what Jesus died for. He died so we could start over again and again and again. The debts are cleared. Well, Scott, this is really interesting. Will you do me a favor? If you hear from somebody in Ray County and they're willing to visit like this, I would just love an opportunity to talk to them. And I know my congregation members would too. That would be fabulous.
Oh, I'd absolutely love to. That's part of our work, is identifying feedback from beneficiaries, and
Yep.
when we get it,
Yep.
it's very easy for us to tie it back to the donor that made it happen, or the campaign in this case.
Mhm.
And when and if we hear from those folks, I will absolutely forward that to you. We get a relatively low return on that stuff. There's a lot of stigma associated with debt.
I get it.
I think everyone understands that intuitively.
Yep.
And not always are people willing to, make a public appearance on it. But we have, in some cases, met with people who didn't mind doing that and didn't mind sharing their story. And if that happens, you will absolutely be the first to know.
That's great to know. And if you talk to them, or if you get a letter from them and you want to write back to them, you can tell them that when we were running this campaign, I had person after person after person come up to me and say, I know what they're going through. I've had medical difficulties. The bills are just crazy. In some cases, they said, I spent years trying to pay this back. And it touched their hearts in a way. And so as they gave to RIP Medical, what was happening is RIP Medical was giving back to them, giving them a way to express their gratitude for the help that they've received, but also to pay it forward. So
Pay it forward.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Well, let me tell you just a bit about what we're doing this Christmas. We're creating a national campaign called A Nation That Cares, that's building up for the next 2 months to a big abolishment in Christmas, around Christmas time, where we're going to ask that those churches who've reached out to us to do local debt relief and we didn't have it available, to extend the arms of their embrace from coast to coast.
Yeah.
Our neighbors are everywhere in this country. They're in Maine, they're in Florida, they're in Washington, they're in Arizona, they're everywhere within the United States of America.
Yeah.
So what we're asking is that if you want to get involved again, and it's okay to extend that love beyond a particular county, we're going to try to abolish $500 million of medical debt that we have available that falls outside of all these precious pockets that we're lucky enough to receive medical debt.
Sure.
There's $500 million outside of that. So we're going to do our very best to raise the money necessary to abolish all of that medical debt and make a big announcement in the Christmas season about the love that we've been able to share with each other and the debt that we've been able to relieve.
You bet. Good morning, everyone. Is this on? Okay, good. I found that microphones always work better when you turn them on. So, welcome everyone. Also, welcome to all of you who are watching online. It's good to have all of you here, and it's good to be the church. Although I have to tell you, I looked in here at about 2 minutes to 9, and the place looked like a ghost town. There were maybe 15 or 20 people. So you all like to make it at the last minute, don't you, on Sunday morning? I get it. And that video, when we were recording it, I didn't realize how far off the camera I was. I felt like I should have been doing this. Anyway, would you please put the first slide up? The Bible passage that Scott mentioned, I want to look at that a little more closely. And so this is from Romans chapter 13, verse 8. And let's all read it together if we could. Let no debt remain standing except the continuing debt of one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. Okay, I want you to notice those two words that I have in red down there, has fulfilled. You would think I'd want to talk about debt, and we do, and not just monetary debt, but also the debt that we hold with each other in terms of the way we need to love and care and forgive each other. But I want you to take a look at that word. Next slide, please, because this is the Greek word, plero, is what it is, and it's literally. Have you ever heard the term plethora? Well, it comes from this word. And translated in our scripture passage, it's fulfilled. Okay. And by the way, let me stop here because I got to do an English lesson first. It's a perfect tense verb. Okay, which means that you ready for the English? I'm geeking out on you now. Which means that when something is perfect tense, it means that it's a completed action. It's already done and packaged and completed, okay? And so it isn't that it will be fulfilled. It isn't that it is being fulfilled. It has been fulfilled already. That's what that means. But then there's more, because look at the way it translates. We translate it as fulfilled, but literally the word means more than full. It means that it's overflowing, okay? So, can you go back to the other slide? So when we leave no debt except the continuing debt to love one another, the law has been, it has overflowed, okay? It's not just fulfilling the law like, okay, I've done my duty. It's like bubbling up over the top. That's what happens when we do that. I just think that's so interesting, and I think it's a key to understanding the passage that Dan just read. The self-giving love. So the passage, it was a parable that Jesus told from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 16. And it goes something like this. There is this rich man who has great wealth, and so much so that he's wealthy enough where he can hire a manager to take care of his business affairs. And the manager, he learns, is playing fast and loose with his riches. And so he calls this guy in, and he says, prepare your final report, you're fired. Okay, now, up to this point, the parable makes perfect sense, right? That's exactly what we would expect to happen. If somebody is out there messing with the company funds, and by the way, he's not just messing with them, but he's doing it for his own personal gain and enrichment. Okay, so if he's doing that, he's going to get fired, right? That just makes perfect sense. But this is where it gets, how do I want to say this? Not just confusing. It's just the sense of it just sort of leaves. So here this guy is, and now he's faced with this problem because he knows that he can't dig ditches. He's been sitting behind a desk way too long, kind of like me. He's been sitting behind a desk way too long, and he's too proud to beg, and so he comes up with this plan. Okay? He calls in everybody that owes the master money, and he says, "What do you owe?" The guy says, "Well, I owe 800 gallons of olive oil." He said, "Take your bill, quickly, don't show anybody, write down 400. Cross out the 800, write down 400. Next guy comes in, "What do you owe?" 1,000 bushels of wheat. Up, cross it out. Make it 800 bushels of wheat. And on it goes, right? And so, now you would think, when the master finds out about it, and he does, you would think that, if he fired him before, maybe you just throw him in jail now. But that's not the case. And this is where it gets strange. It doesn't make sense. Instead, the master compliments the guy. And he admires him for his resourcefulness. It makes no sense, does it? Unless, of course, our sense of what's important and how we use the things that have been given to us is very different from that of the master's. Maybe this guy didn't lose his job because he was playing fast and loose with the master's riches. Maybe this guy lost his job because he was playing fast and loose with the riches for his own personal gain, and nothing else mattered. Because, here he is. He cheated the guy once, now he's cheating him again. But this time, he's doing it for the purpose of making friends. Forgiving debt, relieving those people of that which they owed, giving them space to live. That's what he does. I was thinking about a paraphrase quote. Love, self-giving, isn't everything. It's the only thing. And yes, I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan, and I just quoted from Vince Lombardi, the great coach of the Green Bay Packers, the things I do for this job. But isn't that true? Loving isn't everything, it's the only thing. Self-giving isn't everything, it's the only thing. And when we love in such a way, when the only debt that we have is the debt of caring for each other, then God's law isn't just fulfilled, it has been flowing over. Well, let's stop here for just a second, and we'll sing. So I have a little question for you this morning. Why are you here on this earth? What's your purpose? I'd like you to think about that one. Because, on Wednesday night, we were, in the sermon, we were talking about the way we kind of traditionally in this culture find purpose. We accumulate stuff, right? And so I call it the chase. So you go over here and you buy this pair of jeans and you have them for a while and they make you feel good. But after about a week or two, that wears off and you come over here and you chase over here for this shirt and that makes you feel good for a while and then it doesn't. So you keep chasing things to look for happiness, to find happiness. And you know something? After church, two of the guys stopped me, Jake and John, and they're both race car drivers. And they said, man, I know what you're talking about. Said, when you're racing a car, said, you're always chasing something. And they said, it's addictive, it's intoxicating. But then, all of a sudden, you got to come down because you find out that the chase is not what life's about. At least not that chase. And they've both kind of given up driving for a while, racing, because there are way more important things in life they're finding, other than this high that they kept getting all the time, chasing. I thought that was so interesting. I would never in a million years have thought of race cars like that it's a high, but it is. And you all know what it's like because you might not race cars, but you might have something else that does the same thing for you, right? And so let me ask you, what's your purpose here? Why are you on this earth at this time? St. Augustine said, he said, God gave us people to love and things to use. But so very often, sin enters in, and when it does, it has a way of flipping the equation so that we love things and use people. What are you here for? What's the purpose in life? As you think about that, I'd like to read you something. After a couple days after my interview with Scott, we got a mail from RIP Medical. Listen to this. This is from a woman who lives in Ray County, Tennessee. I just recently received a letter from RIP Medical Debt stating that they had abolished my debt. The problem was that I had no insurance and I was not covered by Medicare yet. So I ended up with a huge amount of debt and was thankful that the hospital even agreed to help me in my case. That hospital, they were so very kind to do so, and believe me, it was a serious discussion that went on before they agreed to do it. It's a wonderful place, and I hated it when I owed them so much money. And I've hated it for years now. But I was very thankful when I received a letter saying that RIP Medical, funded by First Lutheran Church in Algona, had taken a large part of my debt and abolished it for me, releasing me from a lot of pressure. I think you are angels, and I appreciate all that you have done for this old lady. Thank you. It's better than all the stuff in the world. That's better than just living for yourself. And by the way, something I forgot to mention. Did you notice, I noticed in that passage, that before this guy is fired, he didn't have many friends. I mean, he's so busy collecting stuff for himself, misusing for his own benefit, that there's nobody around when the hammer drops and the gravy train derails. And his only two legitimate choices are dig ditches and beg. But then he takes that same wealth and he misuses it again, but this time to make friends.
And not only is the master impressed, but now he has so much more. His life isn't enriched with stuff. The stuff that in the end kind of isolated him, right? Kind of left him all by himself. He had all the stuff in the world, but he had nothing else. He had no one else. But now he's got people like this woman. Changed a life. Relieved a debt. I think about that in terms of money, and I think about that in terms of our life together as Christians. And not just the financial debts that we have with each other, but the debt of sin, the debt of hurt and pain that we cause for each other. Have no debt except the debt of love that you owe to everyone else. What's your purpose in life? Why are you here?